Hello, this is Todd Siegel with the Psychic Zone. I wanted to talk a little bit about psychic abilities today. I wanted to talk about people's perceptions of psychic abilities, that kind of thing. I also want to backtrack a little bit over my past podcasts, talking about world predictions and political predictions and stuff like that. And I must say, we are kind of towards the later half of October, and people were acting like such children, sending me emails and making their statements on my Facebook page and stuff about politics, and they're acting like children. Worse, I would say they're just acting like crazy people. So we will leave the political predictions behind. It's really a shame, actually. I mean, I can't believe the way people are acting. Well, it doesn't surprise me, too, but this politics has people triggered, enraged and triggered. And it's pointless. It's really pointless. There's going to be a lot more things that are going to concern people over the next few years besides this crap. It's going to have to do with wars overseas and economic issues and all sorts of stuff. But, I look at this year, the year of the Chinese dragon. It makes sense. A lot of inflated egos. A lot of payback for people. Next year we go into the year of the snake. That's my sign, actually. I got a big birthday coming up next year, and I am not happy about it. But it's just, it's just a male ego age thing. I'll just try to forget about it. I already requested that I just have a little cartoon birthday cake and some balloons and party favors, and I'll be happy. Anyway, today I wanted to talk a little bit about psychic abilities, and I've been doing this stuff over 20 years, long time. And I remember consulting with a psychic friend of mine many years ago, and he told me, he says, the biggest challenge is the public and how they perceive what you do. And I find that more so, well, especially nowadays, people are more opinionated, more self-absorbed. But, some people say, oh, well, do you have off days? Are you, not up to par with your abilities? And I'll be like, what? It's like the psychic stream does not quit on me any time of the day, even if I'm tired or not feeling well. It's still there. The only thing that can wear you out, though, is with certain people, it's a little more of a challenge to get through to them. And that means picking up vision. And most of the time, I don't try to, I don't really think at the time what is causing the block. Although sometimes, and it's not really a block, it just means it takes more effort from me and those kind of readings can actually wear you out. It's not the psychic vision itself that wears you out, it's the people that you are reading for. And for whatever reason, they're making it harder. A lot of people think that in order to become more intuitive, you have to be a more calm person, you have to be a more meditative person, a more spiritual person. And that's not true. That's really not true. I get my sharpest visions when I'm awake and I'm engaged. I can be in the middle of traffic on a highway. You know, it can be terrible weather out. Although sometimes storms do affect me and I will not read during certain storms. It seems to disrupt what I see. Like if I have a customer and we have an appointment in the afternoon, there's a terrible thunderstorm coming, I will politely ask them if we can do it later or at another time. Because the weather sometimes can impact my focus. Look, if I'm nervous about something, it will affect me, of course. I'm only human. Psychic abilities is not an extra human ability, it's a part of us. Some people get vision through different ways. Some have to be asleep at night and to have dreams, although dreams mostly are subliminal, are affected by subliminal thinking, the brain. Although there are some people who have had very revealing mediumship type dreams, people that visit them in their sleep. And for some people, the only time that they are more open intuitively is when they're asleep. And then there are certain times of the day when people are more intuitive. But you don't have to be a balanced person to have psychic abilities. And some people will never have psychic abilities. You know, you cannot teach everybody how to do it. Although there are some good lessons to be learned for people who just want to learn about it. It kind of helps them in their lives. For example, it helps them to stop overthinking about situations. You know, I always learned so much from older people. I mean, really old people. I've met some people, you know, in their upper 90s who I learned from. They're not so focused on fear in their life. They're kind of like, whatever happens just happens. There's nothing I'm going to do at this point to really change my life. So if you're a person that focuses on too many daily things in your life, that will disrupt your psychic stream. But I'm only human too. If I'm sitting here and I'm doing readings and I'm going out and I've got a problem with my lawnmower and I got to go fix something or get a part, well, I'm done with the psychic realm, and then I'm outside in the physical world dealing with stuff. Oh my God, this part's so expensive. And especially today, prices on everything is very expensive. I'm glad I'm not a carpenter anymore. I wouldn't even know how to give somebody an estimate for doing work on their house. I couldn't even. I would be like, well, let's just see what happens. Anxiety and fear are not necessarily a block to psychic abilities at all. I attribute my anxiety that I've had for so many years as conducive to my psychic visions. The only problem that happens in a reading is if I have somebody who has so much fear that psychic stream is muffled coming to me. It's like I'm sitting here reading their worst case scenario. And this has happened many times. And usually during that type of reading, I will caution them. Please, you've got to do something about your anxiety and your fear. Because to me, that can make your worst fears come true. If you are so focused on something, that worst fear can likely happen. We make things happen. We can manifest those things. So be careful about your thinking. Be very careful. But I've had that, I've seen that so much in my life, and I've seen it among other people, and you have to be very careful about your thinking. If you're a very inward person, a sensitive person, most likely you are involved with your fears and anxieties on an ongoing basis. It's not going to help with your clarity into situations. So just step back from yourself. That is one way to help your intuitive abilities. Feelings. People who have too many feelings about things, drop them. When I do a reading, I've got no feeling either way. Sometimes before the reading, I will actually get some vision before I speak to the person. Especially if it's a missing pet. I'll get somebody books an appointment. Yeah, I just had my cat meow at me. Sometimes I'll get an appointment booked. They'll send a picture and the information that I need. And all of a sudden my mind is going somewhere. So I'll tell them about it. And usually I try to get those missing pet readings as soon as possible to people. And but missing pets can be a rather hard thing to do. Because more than likely there's a reason why that pet went missing in the first place. I hate to tell you, but over 50% of my missing pet cases are people who are dog sitters or pet sitters who have lost the pet for the owner. This is happening more and more. And if you are a pet sitter or taking care of people's pets, I don't care if that dog likes you or you think the dog likes you. They will react differently with you than they do their owners, and keep that in mind. Yeah, I used to board horses for people. And it would take quite a while till I got used to the horse, but I would never put my guard down. I would never put my guard down. Because I know that horse will react differently with me than the owner. Now, I've been kicked and bitten and all sorts of things that came sort of out of left field. So never presume. But as a pet sitter, don't assume that pet will act for you the way it does for that owner. If the owner says, yes, you could put her out in the yard for a couple of hours, fenced yard, no. If you do it, make sure you are attending to the pet and you are there. Don't take a collar off. In fact, I wouldn't even let the dog out in the yard loose. I would probably, as a safety precaution, use the leash and take the dog for walks. It really matters, and I cannot tell you how many pet investigations I've had involving pet sitters. I think for this whole fall, they were all pet sitter related. That goes for cats too. A lot of times missing pets will go because there's family circumstances, a divorce, or they're moving, or there's a lot of tension about finances going on. There's always some sign as to why the pet is gone. And I have to say honestly, some pets that have left homes, I was hoping they wouldn't go back because I felt these were not good homes. I felt problems there. There have been certain instances where rescues have intervened with adopted pets and have taken those pets back after I found them for them, because the pet wasn't a good match to the new family, to the new owners. You know, I wish there were some teaching seminars for, you know, if you're getting a new pet, just to go over some basic stuff. You know, when you have a cat and you move to a new home, and your cat's used to being outside at your other home, you do not let that cat out at your new home. Maybe after 3 to 6 months, even a year, supervised, getting the cat used to it, to the outdoors or whatever you want to do. I remember when I moved to Virginia from Massachusetts and I brought my animals down here, my whole farm. And I remember my dog, it was late summer. My dog was so frightened to go outside. Oh my God, we had those cicadas and all sorts of different types of animals and insects in the area that were making noises, even certain frogs that she wasn't used to. It really took her about a year to kind of loosen up. Another thing were the snakes. We had little tiny garden snakes back in Massachusetts. Down here, you got some 4-foot snakes, massive. I remember my dog's face. She was just... The other thing were the thunderstorms and the storms down here. A hurricane came from off the coast, and we were not used to hurricanes, and I was a mess. I was really a mess. My horses went crazy during the storm. They didn't know what to do. I just made sure they were safe out in the field. I didn't want them near trees. And but all the animals had to get used to the new environment. But animals are very intuitive, so if you have problems going on in your home, animals are picking it up. If you want to be more intuitive on the whole, I suggest you dive into the nature realm. Or if you have your own pets, practice with them. Practice different trains of thought if you have certain animal issues, and see how they respond. Horses, which have been a part of my life for a long time, horses are so intuitive. So intuitive. I remember I used to sit upstairs in my old house in the window, and way across the street was a pasture where my horses were, and my one horse, Jake, I remember focusing on him, and he was just out there grazing. And I'd tell him in my mind, "Hey, Jake, look at me. I'm over at the window. I'm at the house." And I can't tell you how many times when I did that, he would all of a sudden look up from the grass, look over at the house. So animals are very intuitive. If you're going on a trip, especially for Christmas and Thanksgiving coming up, just be very careful. Your pets will know you're going away weeks before you even go. They'll know. And what pets do is they flee danger. You know, if you're upset, if you're sad, pet will sense that as danger. Pet won't necessarily be sad with you, but the pet will sense, danger, I should flee. Understanding animal behavior is very, very, it's a very good exercise to intuition. But to make yourself more intuitive, there are exercises to block out your mind. I really attribute a lot of my intuition to being able to blank out, space out. I've done this as a kid. In fact, I remember the teacher in class used to say, "Todd, where's your mind?" I would sit there in a full daze. I wasn't asleep. I was just in a focused daze. I've been doing this since I was a kid. I think it was kind of a reflex to pressure. I didn't like pressure in my life. I didn't like pressure as a kid. I was always pressured to be social. I was pressured to do my work. I was pressured to do this, pressured to do that. I wasn't a rebellious kid necessarily, or a oppositional kid. Actually, I was very quiet, shy. I just didn't like pressure. I had a lot of fears when I was a child. A lot of fears. Going back to the anxiety part, yes, some people, when I am reading them, they have so much anxiety. And sometimes it can give me the wrong vision because I'm feeling that anxiety so bad in them. It's given me a wrong scenario. There have been, I do all kinds of readings. So I do, of course, missing pets, but I do mediumship readings. And those have been harder lately because I feel that people are on kind of a different voyage in their lives now. I've detected this since about 2019, actually. It's not that the spirits aren't around, it's just people have changed. And that very much affects what spirits come through. I'm reading the spirits through them. And then sometimes I'll focus on the house itself. And, spirits that you may not think were a part of your life or important in your life are often coming into your life for some reason. Yeah, this past fall has been I've been working on quite a few cases. Some have dealt with family estates and deaths in the family, criminal activity among people. There's been a lot of heavy readings from about August till now that I've worked on. And it takes time. Also, intuition takes time. You don't necessarily get these instant visions. But, yes, sometimes information can come to me very fast, like split second fast. When is Joe and I, when are we going to get married? Boom, 5 comes to me, 5. 5 is the month of May. Or if they're specifically planning for January, it could be the 5th of January. So sometimes it comes real fast, and then sometimes you need to focus. I've actually did a reading recently on a very big missing person case going on that I've been asked about many times. I will not share information. But when I'm working on a big case like that, I try to find angles, and that's part of the psychic detective in me. I'm trying to find angles into the case. The whole case doesn't come to me right away. In fact, I don't try to find out what the end result is. Now, I might feel in some cases of missing people that an individual is just not alive. I just don't feel them. I don't feel them, using their credit card. I don't feel them hanging out with somebody. But I'm very careful to tell the client that the person is dead. I will just simply say, I'm not getting movement or activity from this person. So it doesn't look good to me, but we have to prove it first. And I'm using the same means to get basically as the police are doing. What are they trying to do? They're trying to get evidence. They want evidence. I'm trying to get evidence too. I'm not trying to solve it all at once. I'm trying to get evidence. But so many psychics fail because they will try to do the case in 5 minutes. You cannot do it that way. It takes some time. Sometimes you have to step away from the desk and come back. A lot of times that actually helps with some of my missing pet cases. I'll step away from it for a bit, and then when I come back, I'll get some new information. Another thing in my mind is that of not knowing. That's a very key state of mind, is not knowing. I never presume that I know something. And I have that attitude every time I do a reading for somebody. I just don't know. And as I've always said, the best thing to do is to test yourself. Testing yourself is very key. I've learned from my investigations what's worked and what hasn't worked. What were the key things that helped me on the case? I'll look back at all of those. But test yourself. Well, if your friend says, I'm feeling terrible and I've got to go to a doctor next week, I suggest you read what's going on. You don't have to tell your friend. Read what's going on. Then when she tells you later what it is, see if you're right. That's testing yourself. That is very key. That is very key. When I started doing readings for people, it was not an easy thing. And then when I finally went professional and wanted to do it professionally, nothing came easy to me as far as dealing with people. I had very snotty, sarcasm and jokes made and criticism, terrible criticism from people. I was exposed to a bunch of people that just shouldn't have readings. I had people who were drunk. I had people who were stalking other people, trying to find information so they could stalk people. Unfortunately, I was too nice, and I couldn't understand why these people were so rotten, but that's just the way some people are. So if you are psychic, then you need to be careful about your clientele. I've been making changes lately, actually, to kind of fine-tune what I'm doing. I'm not necessarily charging more, but I'm careful. I used to actually get customers, when I first started, who they found out I was very up and coming and very popular, and they would pay for a reading so they could debate me. On a rare occasion, I will get that. I will get somebody who is just not a nice person. The only difference now is I will discontinue the reading. I will just stop right there. I've actually spaced my readings out a little bit longer nowadays and don't do them so short anymore. In fact, I've eliminated my 15-minute reading to the public because I feel it's too short a time. A lot of times by 13 minutes is when the person starts to open up for me, and then I can start giving them important information. It really depends on the person. So I cannot do it in a short amount of time. I don't do over an hour, not unless it's an investigation or something, because then I'll lose my focus. And a lot of times when I'm focusing on somebody, I do weed out the information that I don't think is relevant to the information that I think is relevant. That goes for like missing pet investigations. You know, if I'm trying to follow a missing pet in a busy neighborhood, and I tell them there's a white car out in front of the house, is that going to help them? How many white cars are actually, in that neighborhood? So I'll weed out information that I don't think is relevant. In some rural locations, it's very hard because there's not a lot of objects that I tune into. And with missing pets, especially missing cats, sometimes they'll just go to another territory and stay there. If they can get food and water, they're in some shelter, There's no reason why, it's just in their nature. But missing pet investigations I would not recommend for most psychics out there. Yes, it's very gratifying when I find a pet, but a lot of the times there's bad circumstances. There's some pets that will die as you're tracking them. Some will get hit by cars, some will get stolen. I've had some pretty intense investigations with missing pets. And whenever I get somebody booking a reading for a missing pet, I get a worried feeling, and I'll want to talk to them as soon as possible. With intuitive abilities, you will want to use your good days and your bad days. Yeah, I do believe that whether it's astrological or whether it's a full moon out or just a more focused time for you, use it. There will be times when you are not as focused. But every reading is different. And the way I see things is different than people think. I'm working on a big court case right now for a family. And there's a series of court meetings in this trial. They'll give me the date of the next trial, and basically, sometimes I'll hear words come out: acquittal, deal made, or prosecution, or this and that. The other part of it is I'll see their faces. Last one that I made on this case, I saw the face of the judge. He was favoring my clients. But the news has not come yet. That will come into the next trial of how they're going to do. On this case also, I predicted that there were about 5 lawyers working on this case. I saw 3 dropping out to make 2. That came true. Certain things like that I find, or I will tell the client about. And it is hard. I know it's hard. You want to tell your client good news, but be prepared to not always tell them good news. Be straight and be direct. I mean, if you're going after a missing pet and you don't think the pet's alive, I don't tell them the pet's dead necessarily, but I'll just say, I'm not seeing any movement at this point. That means that the pet's either staying with somebody or is resting. So part of, if you're wanting to be a psychic and you're wanting to do readings for people, you have to be very in tune with how you read for people and have a very good understanding about how you work, how your abilities come to you and how they don't. With mediumship abilities, they're not a separate part of psychic abilities. They are part of it. People will always write to me, I would like a mediumship reading. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I've got another hat in my drawer that I should put on that says medium. It's not separate from a psychic reading. In fact, if I'm doing a psychic reading for somebody, oftentimes a spirit will come through. If somebody wants to focus on the spirit that comes to me, oftentimes they won't come through because they want that so much. The other thing, too, is that spirits that don't come through is not a bad thing, necessarily. Those spirits have moved on, or they become on hold for a while. There have been spirits, family related to me, who I wanted to connect with for a long time, who were not coming to me at all. And then there were some that came to me very, very loudly. But then over time, that changed. And certain spirits in my family came through, or old friends. So, spirit life changes. And there's many parts of our spirit. It's not just one spirit. We are made up of very many energies. very many lives, very many experiences all in one. Past lives is a very relevant subject for a lot of people. I feel some people are very tormented in this life because something was unresolved from a previous life, or they had a very difficult previous life. I've done readings for people who were actually murdered in a past life. They actually acknowledged it before they came to me. They said, I've gone through a lot of hypnotism, past life therapies, all sorts of things. I know I was murdered. I saw what happened. So past lives are very much a part of us, but past lives are not always what people think. Yes, physically reborn, sort of, but sometimes it's a spirit comes to us, or is a part of us, or is a guide to us from another life, and it feels as if we lived that life. It's not so black and white as people think. The spirit world is not black and white. There's a lot of gray. There's no givens. There's no rules. If somebody died yesterday, there's no rule as to when that person comes to us. They may not come to me, or they may come to me immediately. There does seem to be some things associated with the spirit and time. Yes, I will admit to that. But a lot of it has to do with the client. If I'm working on a murder investigation and a family's son was recently murdered, it may be very hard for me to work with that family. I might have to work with a third party or the police on it because they're not going to be as emotional. And when we're really, really emotional, it can block that spirit from coming through. So just remember, in psychic abilities, it's a very fine line to what you see and don't see, and can be affected by the people who you are reading. And it's very hard for us. It's very hard for us. Don't take it so personal. And I don't take them personal anymore. When I first started, I was very innocent. I didn't know what to think of people, and people really did affect me because they were pretty nasty. I didn't just start in doing readings and having a good time and, oh boy, look at what I could do. It was not like that for me. People were testing me. People were very oppositional. I don't care if they're skeptical or not. Skeptics don't really throw me off. But if somebody comes to me and they're very hard line against psychics, yeah, that will have an impact on me. Well, it's just like if you're making a friend. Okay, this person comes to you and they're very judging of you. they don't like to be around your type usually, but they're willing to be your friend, it's not going to work. It's the same thing with psychic readings. And it is frustrating for the most part getting through to people who only want to hear what they want to hear. And that type of person a lot of times won't have a good reading because you cannot accurately give them information. I've actually done some of my best readings for people in the military and people who are police officers. Because their thinking is not, it's not so emotional. It's really cut to the chase. Usually it's very on point. They don't care either way, whatever I say. But if I get somebody who's like, well, he's not telling me the same things that my other psychic told me. Which psychic should I go to? Those people are very difficult to read for. If they're judging you the way they do other psychics, or they've seen a lot of other psychics, that's a no-no. They should space it apart. They really should. Because I won't have any accurate information to give them. So hopefully this was helpful to you. And I feel readings in the future will be going better because I feel that I need to have a little time with people rather than a hurried amount of time. And I think right now it's a very difficult time for people. I think they are so focused on this presidential election going on. It's consuming their minds. Consuming. It's a shame, really. It really is a shame. It's really a shame the way people are acting. And all I can say is if you're so fanatical about it, you may lose a lot of friends at the end of the day after it's all over. I remember previous presidential elections, and I lost a lot of friends. They were combative, obsessed, judging. And we keep going through these situations, especially with the pandemic. I will never forget the way people acted around me, what they said to me. It's really a shame. As a society, we've got a lot of work to do. We're really in reverse. We're not becoming a more open, more peaceful society. We're going backwards. And what can you do to change it? Be yourself. Be the best self you can be. But I'm not very optimistic about our society and where it's going right now. Remember that the best way, and also for if you want to really develop your psychic abilities, is to be a grounded person, a very grounded person. No, that does not mean that you can't have anxieties and fears. Most sensitive people have those things. But grounding yourself, that could be physically. For me, it's my motorcycle. It's very grounding to me. I'm also a RC plane enthusiast and build model planes and fly them in my front yard. It's very grounding to me. And if you want, you can go over to YouTube, and I just made a couple of short videos of taking off and landing one of my planes on there this last weekend. Anyway, I look forward to comments and insights or questions that you might have about what I talked about today. I'd be very curious to look at those and answer them for you. But I better go, and you take care.